Hello and welcome to Unacademy IAS English, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. A very good morning and welcome to the daily Hindu news analysis. So let's begin today's discussion by first looking at the topics that we are going to discuss. From the Delhi edition of the Hindu, I have chosen 8 important articles. There are 4 articles which are very crucial both for your prelims and mains exam, and they require a comprehensive analysis. And we have 4 small articles relevant for the prelims exam only. So let's cover all these topics in complete detail so that you don't have to go back and read the newspaper again. If you guys are liking our initiatives, do support us with your likes and comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. So before we start, I have a small announcement. Do ensure that you join our official Telegram channel as well, because after the session ends, we conduct a daily quiz on these topics. So this gives you an opportunity to attempt MCQs and prepare for the upcoming prelims exam and revise these articles. So scan the QR code or click on the link provided in the video description. With this, let's get started by looking at this important column from page number 14. In this article, the Hindu raises a very important question. Is India's national capital, Delhi, becoming an uninhabitable city? Because as you all know, Delhi faces extreme weather conditions and extreme levels of pollution. During the winter months, Delhi is hit by deadly air pollution, and the air quality index has dropped to very severe category, and this persists for several days. In fact, throughout the year, for a large number of days, Delhi experiences very poor air quality. In the summer months, Delhi experiences deadly heat waves. And as a result, this is affecting the quality of life for the people in Delhi. Both these occurrences, they take a big toll on the city and as well as on the health of the population. So in this context, the article raises a very valid question. Is India's national capital, Delhi, becoming an uninhabitable city? So the main focus of the article here is the air pollution that is primarily seen during the winter months. So let's understand first how air pollution is measured in India. The Central Pollution Control Board, which is the nodal authority, it has come out with an index called Air Quality Index. I'm sure many of you might be familiar with this. Under the Air Quality Index, 8 important air pollutants are constantly monitored and tracked in real time across Indian cities. So for the sake of prelims, it's important to know which are these 8 air pollutants tracked under the Air Quality Index. It covers particulate matter 10 and PM 2.5. Particulate matter refers to very fine, superfine aerosols that are suspended in the air following incomplete combustion. These are very fine particles, several times smaller than the width of your hair, and especially PM 2.5 is extremely hazardous as it can easily enter your lungs, eventually enter the bloodstream, leading to severe health complications. Then it also measures the levels of NO2, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, ozone, that is ground level ozone, which is an air pollutant, and as well as ammonia and lead. So these air pollutants are tracked based on their levels, concentration levels. It is built into a composite index that eventually gives us the air quality index of a given place. Now, to make this easier for the common man to understand and appreciate the gravity of the deteriorating air quality, the Central Pollution Control Board comes out with a color-coded early warning and awareness forecasting system. So there are 6 categories into which air quality index is broken down, from good to severe, going all the way up to very severe category. So a total of 6 color-coded ranges are used to categorize the level of air pollution, and this indicates the impact on health. For each color-coded category, the likely health implications are also specified by the Central Pollution Control Board. Now, if you look at Delhi specifically, as I told you, Delhi does face extreme weather, be it winter, be it summer. It faces extreme cold winters, extremely hot summers. But what really causes a problem would be the deadly heat waves during summer and the deadly air pollution seen during the winter. It's in this context that the article is asking this question: has Delhi become uninhabitable? The answer to this question is very straightforward, very simple. If not today, in the future, if things continue as it is, we are just maybe years or decades away from witnessing the national capital becoming an uninhabitable city. If you speak to anyone in Delhi, or if you're someone from Delhi, I don't think you need any further explanation. I'm sure you would have experienced the deadly air during winter, the deadly heat waves during summer, which makes living in the city almost impossible. Now, focusing specifically on air pollution, why does it occur during winter months? There is some very interesting insight provided in this article. See, I took up this article for discussion, even though there are many repeat articles coming again and again, and even though we have covered the topic, because there are some unique insights being offered in this article. See, generally, when Delhi suffers the deadly air pollution during winter months, the focus is primarily on PM 2.5 levels. Why? Because, as I said, PM 2.5, because of its superfine small size, it can easily enter the airway, the respiratory tract, lodge into your lungs, and eventually travel into the bloodstream as well. This leads to chronic inflammation of various organs, and it could make you susceptible to a variety of diseases, not just respiratory illness, but it could even lead to several other related diseases as well. Now, if you look at Delhi's air pollution, over the years, for a large part of the year, Delhi suffers from very poor quality to severe quality of air pollution. In a given year of 365 days, on an average, if you, let's say, consider the year 2020 as well, because 2020 was a abnormality because of the pandemic, because of COVID-19. Due to the lockdown during the pandemic, pollution levels did decline slightly across the world, and Delhi was no exception. So when you consider 2020 as well, and look at the period of air pollution from 2017 to 2023, in a given year of 365 days, for 139 days, Delhi experienced poor to severe air quality, meaning the air quality index was at least about 200, which is still hazardous and dangerous. See, don't think air quality is extremely dangerous only when it becomes severe or very severe. Even poor air quality on the air quality index is equally dangerous. Of course, the threat increases with the deterioration of air quality, but anything above poor air quality is equally hazardous and dangerous. And Delhi experienced this for 139 days in a year on an average from 2017 to 2023. Now, since I told you 2020 was an abnormal year because of the pandemic, pollution levels would have dropped quite significantly because of the lockdown. Now, if you take out 2020 from this metric, and if you measure the average number of days in a year where Delhi experienced poor to severe air quality from 2017 to 2023, it jumps to 189 days, more than half the year. So it's not just a winter-specific problem. Since we keep reading these articles only in November, December, January, we have been made to assume that Delhi faces very poor air quality only in the winter months. But that is not the truth. In fact, throughout the year, for more than half of the year, let's take the average of this. At least 150 days in a year, Delhi experiences poor to severe air quality. So this is extremely hazardous, extremely dangerous. Look at the number of good days with regard to air quality. In single digits, air quality was safe in Delhi hardly 2 to 5 days. Satisfactory to moderate for these number of days, as you can see in the graph. So that's why I told you this article is very interesting. So air pollution in Delhi is not just a winter-specific problem, it is a year-long problem. So please move out of this misconception that Delhi suffers severe air quality only in winter months. Of course, the problem gets aggravated due to certain factors. But even during the other months, from let's say March to September, even during these months, for several days, Delhi does witness poor air quality to severe air quality on some occasions. Now, another wrong assumption is about stubble burning. During the winter months, when Delhi gets completely hazed out due to the toxic smog which gets formed, there is complete media coverage, and almost every article, every report points towards stubble burning occurring in the neighboring parts of Delhi. The stubble fire which is set by farmers in Punjab, Haryana, UP. Yes, this is definitely one of the major contributors which pushes the particulate matter towards Delhi, and it gets concentrated and accumulated towards the national capital. But however, stubble burning is not the only challenge. Stubble burning is only half the problem, rather less than half the problem. The other half of the source of air pollution is coming within Delhi. Studies have clearly established this, but media reports tend to exaggerate the problem posed by stubble burning. Definitely, stubble burning is one of the major contributors. No one is denying that. But the other truth is that, the other half of the truth is that within Delhi, more than at least close to 50% of the sources of air pollution is coming from within Delhi itself. Stubble burning outside of Delhi is contributing to it. The wind which blows from the west does bring the particulate matter from parts of Punjab, Haryana towards Delhi, and definitely it contributes to the problem, aggravates the problem. But within Delhi, at least half of the sources of air pollution are present. So what are we doing about it? So this graph here is very, very illustrative. Just look at the data that it is depicting. Air quality index in Delhi with and without stubble burning. Studies have shown that the AQI with stubble burning on an average could be at 361 during winter months, especially during November to December, because this is when farmers would have harvested the crop and they would be preparing for the next cropping cycle. So that's when we witness the maximum incidents of stubble burning in Punjab, Haryana and parts of UP. Now, if you take out stubble burning, it's not as if Delhi's air quality will automatically improve. Air quality would still be above 300, which is still very dangerous. It will improve slightly, but without stubble burning as well, Delhi still suffers from extreme air pollution. It will still be one of the most polluted cities in the world. So stop blaming everything on stubble burning. Yes, stubble burning is part of the problem, but the other half of the truth is that there are at least 50% of the sources contributing to air pollution coming from inside of Delhi, not from outside Delhi. So what is the government doing about this? The Delhi government, the central government, what are they doing about the sources of air pollution? Now, if you look at the contributing factors, as I said, a study which was led by IIT Kanpur and other research institutions, they have clearly established that at least 49.44% of the total air pollutants is coming from within Delhi. And out of this, the biggest contributor would be vehicles, that is the automobile sector. Vehicular emissions, the emissions from petrol, diesel vehicles accounts for 34% as far as the sources of air pollution inside of Delhi is concerned. Then the wear and tear that occurs when you drive a vehicle, the friction that the tire has with the surface, or when you brake, the braking action between the brake pads, they release a lot of pollutants, including particulate matter and as well as other air pollutants. And this nearly accounts for 24%. So cumulatively, vehicles alone are accounting for 58% of the air pollution as far as the pollutants within Delhi are concerned. Now we are just looking at the distribution of air pollutants within Delhi, right? We understood that stubble burning and outside factors, let's call it external factors, they are contributing at least around 50% approximately. The other half, the remaining 49 to 50% is coming from within Delhi. Now, when you break this down to try and identify the sources of air pollution within Delhi, 58% of it is coming from vehicles. 34 from vehicular emissions, 24 from tire and brakes, the wear and tear involved with the components of the vehicle. That is a significant chunk. So the solution is very clear. If you want to eliminate this big source of air pollution, you need to shift the city towards public transport. And some of you might argue, sir, Delhi still has one of the best public transportation in India compared to other cities. It has an extensive metro network. It has dedicated bus rail transit routes. It has sufficient buses on the road. Correct, I agree. It does have a decent public transport system, but however, it does not run on clean energy. Very few buses are running on CNG and clean forms of fuel, but still there are several vehicles that still ply on fossil fuels, essentially, which contribute to air pollutants. And also, last mile connectivity is a problem. Despite the extensive public transport network created by the metro and the bus transport system, last mile connectivity is missing, and public transportation in Delhi is definitely not on par with other global cities. So, public transportation focusing on clean energy based transportation with last mile connectivity could be one of the solutions. Other than that, there are other sources inside of Delhi: coal and fly ash from power plants. There are secondary inorganic aerosols from industrial emissions, LPG and municipal solid waste accounting for the rest, and as well as construction, cleaning, etc. So there should be a proactive approach to tackle these different sources of air pollution within Delhi. Now, one last question is, why does Delhi experience the worst of air pollution during winter months? Between November to January, what really happens here? See, this is a combination of the unique meteorological conditions, the unique geography of Delhi. I'm sure many of you would be aware of this. See, hot air present near the surface, it often rises up. Why? Because it is lighter in density. So if, let's say, hot air were to be present, which is the case during summer months, the hot air, as it rises up, it takes the pollutants away with it, disperses the pollutants. So that's why in summer months in Delhi, from March to September, you witness slightly better air quality. It's not that pollution has stopped. The same pollution continues, maybe except for stubble burning. But you don't experience the same level of toxicity because there is hot air present, which is rising up, dispersing the pollutants. Plus, there is some wind present during summer months. And also there is some rain brought in later through the western disturbances. These factors play a critical role. The hot air during summer months, the presence of wind current, and the occurrence of rain. Rain will force down the pollutants, especially particulate matter, to the ground. It will not remain suspended in the air, which you can breathe. Winds will disperse the pollutants, spread it out over a wide region. That's why during summer, you don't experience that level of toxicity, even though the same level of air pollution will be present. But in winter, something different happens. Cold air is dense. It remains closer to the ground. It doesn't rise up like hot air. Essentially, it traps all the pollutants. And to make things worse for Delhi, and call it the bad luck of Delhi, there are almost no winds for several weeks during this period and almost no rains. That's why by chance, if there is a wind current and even if by chance there is a rainfall, it slightly moderates the pollution level. But when that doesn't happen, when there is no wind to disperse the pollutants, when there is no rain to push the pollutants down to the ground, and when cold air is trapping all the pollutants, it's like a smoking pot with a closed lid. That is how Delhi is during winter months. You have a smoking pot with a closed lid on it, and that's what the cold air does. The cold air mass traps all the pollutants, keeps it within the city, and that's why the air pollution becomes so severe. Now, this is again established through data. It's not just through assessments, theories, and assumptions. Just look at the graphs over here. look at air quality index dipping whenever wind and rain is higher. It corresponds to that. Whenever air quality is seeing a jump, you will see that wind and rain has dropped. So you can see that inverse relationship that exists clearly in this chart brought out by the Hindu. Now, the reason why we should be so concerned about the air pollution in Delhi is because this is a serious health hazard. Especially particulate matter, PM 2.5, which is 30 times smaller than the width of your hair. It can easily get trapped in your lungs, enter the bloodstream, causing chronic inflammation, leading to several diseases, several health conditions, and it basically reduces life expectancy. It has an impact on life expectancy, and studies have again clearly established this. It not only leads to respiratory problems, it could even increase the risk of cardiovascular disease. It can even be carcinogenic, increasing the incidence of cancer, right? So life expectancy drops quite significantly, anywhere between 5 to 10 years. A Lancet study has linked 1.67 million deaths in India with pollution, with all forms of pollution. And you can safely assume close to half of it would be because of air pollution. 1 out of 10 deaths occurring in our country is because of ambient particulate matter. That is PM, which is present in the atmosphere where we can breathe the particulate matter. So this chart here shows how different types of pollution, household, that is indoor pollution, ambient particulate matter, and ambient ozone, which is ground level ozone. I told you, right? Ground level ozone is an air pollutant because it is highly toxic. Ozone in the stratosphere might be protecting us from the harmful UV rays, but ground level ozone, which is a result of anthropogenic industrial activities, is highly toxic. So the study shows that the mortality rate for these levels of air pollution, for these different types of air pollution, is quite significantly higher in India. Ambient particulate matter, just look at the data here. It leads to death in the country. 1 out of 10 deaths is being reported and attributed to ambient particulate matter pollution, along with ground level ozone and a few other cases of indoor air pollution. So that is the reason why it is very, very crucial for the government to focus on tackling the sources of air pollution. Because this is not a natural phenomena which is happening. Delhi might have few geographical disadvantages during winter. There might be stubble burning in the outside areas of Delhi. But that is not the root cause. The root cause is poor governance. This is a preventable problem. Providing masks, spraying water, installing smog towers, those are not solutions. Those are gimmicks by the government just to show to the people and media that they are doing something. Just to manage the public anger, to show that politicians care about the problem of air pollution. They take up these symbolic gestures. They will not solve the root problem. If you want to solve the root problem, yes, the ban on stubble burning has to be enforced. But other than that, you need to look at the sources of pollution within Delhi. We understood through this article that close to half of the sources are coming from inside Delhi. So what is the Delhi government doing? What is the central government doing? What are they doing? Instead of solving the problem together, they are fighting against each other. The unique political nature, the federal setup that exists between the Delhi government and the center leads to a political tussle between them. Given that Delhi is a national capital and the unique constitutional provisions related to Delhi, the Delhi government has limited powers, but of course it does share the blame and accountability for failing to tackle the problem of air pollution, and equally the blame lies with the central government as well. So instead of tackling the root causes which are contributing to nearly half of air pollution inside Delhi, they are busy fighting the political game. Right? Every winter this has become a recurring phenomena. Central government will blame Delhi, Delhi government will blame center. Eventually the people are suffering. So the only way out of this is strict enforcement of existing rules and guidelines. We don't need new laws and policies. India is a country which is over-legislated and over-regulated. What we need is effective enforcement. Enforce the emission standards on vehicles. Shift out of unclean transportation towards clean transportation. Move away from fossil fuel-based, internal combustion engine-based vehicles. Shift towards public transport, clean energy-based public transport. Shut down the thermal power plants and shift towards clean sources of energy. Tackle the other sources of air pollution from landfills. Landfills in Delhi are contributing to air pollution. That's why municipal solid waste is a contributor. Tackle the fires which are set inside Delhi. Tackle the fireworks which are set off. So there are solutions available. What it needs is political will and stringent enforcement by the administration. So this is a preventable problem. Never be under the assumption that this is largely a natural phenomena. Maybe there is only a problem created by humans. This is entirely created by humans, and it can be solved only through better governance. So please take up this practice question. Is Delhi becoming an uninhabitable city owing to its hazardous air pollution levels? Examine. So based on what we have discussed, I expect you guys to write an answer and kindly post your answers in the comments so it can help other students as well. Now let's look at another article, a related article on page number 12. We have a column on page number 12 where the writer, the set of writers who brought out this column, they are arguing that India should have an environmental health regulatory agency. They are pointing out the environmental problems in India, from climate change to severe levels of pollution to destruction of environment and biodiversity. India is dealing with a multitude of environmental problems. There has been large-scale deforestation, destruction of biodiversity and ecosystems. Climate change, global warming is contributing to extreme weather and more frequent disasters, more intense disasters. And you have extreme levels of pollution, from air pollution to water pollution to soil pollution. So these environmental problems obviously are having a health impact. Any environmental destruction, any environmental degradation is directly going to affect your health. So the argument of the writers is that India should merge the regulation of environment and health and establish a national level environmental health regulatory agency, because that is the norm in several developed countries. See, right now, the climate change summit is about to conclude. COP29 is about to end in Baku in Azerbaijan. There, India is pushing for climate finance, demanding developed countries to provide funding to developing underdeveloped countries. While India makes the right argument at the Climate Change Convention, when it comes to domestic action, India is found to be lacking. Now, if we have to tackle our own emissions, if we have to deal with pollution and protect our environment and biodiversity, we need strong regulatory agencies. According to a report by UN Environment Programme, the Emissions Gap Report. Please write this down. It can be important for your prelims. The Emissions Gap Report is published by UNEP. According to the report, India saw a 6% increase in its emissions compared to previous year. Even though we talk about reducing our emissions intensity as committed under the Paris Agreement, our emissions has gone up by 6% compared to previous year. And these emissions eventually contribute to pollution as well, degradation of the environment, and affects the health. So the writers are saying that we need an environmental health regulatory agency. That is lacking in India. Because see, right now, environmental issues are dealt with by Central Pollution Control Board. All pollution related matters, air pollution, water pollution, etc., under the powers vested through the Air Act and Water Act. The CPCB and the state level pollution control boards, they tackle pollution. Then Ministry of Environment, Forest, Climate Change. It deals with issues like climate change and global warming, deals with environment protection, biodiversity conservation. right? It tries to tackle hunting and poaching, tries to protect ecosystems and our protected areas. It represents India with regard to the Climate Change Convention, right? But when it comes to healthcare, it is Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Obviously, you need such nodal ministries. But problem is, though environmental degradation and health impact are interlinked and connected, our nodal agencies are not interconnected and interlinked. They're not working together. They're not sharing enough data with each other. Even though Ministry of Health and Family Welfare is dealing with the problems of air pollution, water pollution, it doesn't really engage with Central Pollution Control Board. Even the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare is dealing with the direct consequences of global warming, where we are seeing more spread of diseases. There is no coordination between Environment Ministry and Health Ministry. It's very minimal, right? It's only superficial. There's no exchange of data. There is no holistic approach towards environmental health. That is why the writers are demanding an environmental health regulatory agency for India. An independent body which can look at environmental issues, how it affects human health, and regulate the destruction which is happening to the environment. Because that is the norm in many countries. You look at United States. In the US, there is the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. It's quite frequently reported in the news as well. The EPA provides for holistic regulation, governance, and enforcement as far as protecting the environment is concerned, tackling pollution is concerned, while focusing on human health and the impact on human health. Similarly, in Germany, in Japan, there are federal institutions, one independent regulatory body, oversight body. Germany has the UBA, the Federal Environment Agency. Japan has the Ministry of Environment. And the task of health and environment is unified under these regulatory agencies in these developed countries. So India would also need an independent regulator at the national level, like an apex body that can look at the connection that exists between environmental degradation and the impact on health. That is what the writers are calling for. They point out that growth and conservation or environment protection, they need not be contradictory. See, you would have often heard about this debate that when you try to conserve environment, protect environment too seriously, it will compromise economic growth, which is a valid point. If you focus on just environment protection, biodiversity conservation, how will growth happen? Because eventually economic growth is powered by resources. Without harnessing resources, natural resources, there can't be economic growth, right? But however, this is wrongly projected as a zero-sum game, that to have growth, you need to forget environment protection. That need not be the case, right? Even the contrary is argued, that if you just focus on growth, it will lead to environmental destruction, which is true, but that need not be the case in reality. You need to strike a balance between the two. You need to adopt a balanced path, which is what we call as the sustainable path. You need to tap those resources which are necessary to provide for the required growth, to create the required number of jobs, to provide for the required amount of socio-economic development. But we should not exploit the resources, over-exploit the resources for human greed. That is the difference between sustainable development and exploitative development. So such a sustainable path can be promoted by an environmental health regulatory agency. Because eventually, if you keep destroying your environment, it will have a health impact, and this will also take down your economy. So today, who are just pro-growth and anti-environment, right? They might be defending their approach by saying growth is necessary, even at the cost of environment. Tomorrow, this is a vicious cycle. The more you destroy the environment, it compromises human health, and any degradation of human health will compromise your growth. Look at what's happening in Delhi. Just the previous article that we discussed. Air pollution affects the economy of Delhi. Pollution levels across the country affects the Indian economy. So this balance can be struck if we have an independent regulator, an apex body, which can look at health impact assessment. Just like we have environment impact assessment, which is carried out by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, where all major projects, they have to go through the EIA process to evaluate the environmental impact of a project. Similarly, this agency, if it is set up, if a environmental health regulatory agency is set up, it can bring out health impact assessment. What would be the impact on health because of these large public projects? Accordingly, it can restrict certain activities, regulate economic activities, provide for protection of environment to the extent necessary, and thus strike a balance, bringing about the sustainable path with regard to India's growth story. So it's a very valid point being raised by the writers. So kindly give some thought into this suggestion, and you can expect a question on these lines. Since many countries have this model where they have a federal agency looking after environment and health together, right? It would be appropriate for India as well to consider this possibility. So India urgently needs an environmental health regulatory agency evaluate. Maybe you can expect an essay topic as well. Environment and health are interlinked. Does India require a common regulatory agency to look at the health impact of environmental degradation? On these lines, an essay topic can be given to you. So kindly prepare for this topic, and let's move on to the next article. Next, we have a slightly technical article related to international relations and economy. This article is evaluating the Bilateral Investment Treaty, or BIT, which was recently signed between India and United Arab Emirates. India, UAE are very close partners. In fact, UAE is one of the largest trading partners for India, definitely in the top 5. India, UAE have already implemented a free trade agreement, the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. So it has facilitated the free movement of goods. It has provided for improvement in the trade volume between India and UAE. Both countries are looking to take up the overall bilateral trade volume to $100 billion and above. Apart from that, they are facilitating investments between each other. So to bring stability to the investment policy and to guarantee some protection to the investors while protecting the sovereign right of the government to regulate investments, they have signed a treaty which is Bilateral Investment Treaty. This treaty, which has been signed recently, now it was made public, and it replaces the previous Bilateral Investment Treaty of 2014. It has replaced the 2014 Bilateral Investment Treaty between India and UAE. It is partly based on the model BIT, which India has brought out, which is a guiding document as we are negotiating multiple such BITs with many other countries. For example, with United Kingdom, with European Union, and many others. We are negotiating individual bilateral investment treaties with them to protect the investors, the foreign investors who are investing in India, while retaining the sovereign right of the government to regulate those investments. So India has come out with a model BIT that serves as a guiding document for all the negotiations related to BIT agreements with other countries. But the India-UAE BIT stands out. It is quite unique because it departs from the model BIT. It does mark a departure on some points. It has some positive aspects, some points of concern. So let's quickly evaluate the bilateral investment treaty which has been signed and made public between India and the UAE. Let's talk about the first point. A bilateral investment treaty is necessary for two objectives. One, to protect the investor, because when foreign investors are putting money into our economy, they would have a fear that they might get trapped into court cases, litigations. They might face delays in approvals and clearances, leading to a loss on the investment. So obviously, foreign investors would seek some kind of clarity on the policy and regulation so that some of the investment can be protected. Similarly, the state has an objective, the government. The government definitely has a sovereign right to regulate those investments. Correct? But one concern for investors would be, what if a state over-regulates foreign investments? What if a government misuses, abuses its power and over-regulates those investments which could harm the foreign investors? So again, you need a balance between the two. You need some degree of investment protection to protect the interests of the investors. At the same time, you need to protect the sovereign right of the government to regulate those investments. So that is the purpose of a BIT, a bilateral investment treaty. So it sets up a investor-state dispute settlement tribunal. It provides for ISDS, Investor-State Dispute Settlement Tribunal. Apart from taking up investment-related cases at domestic courts, there is a need for a tribunal because foreign investors may not be convinced with the judicial system in the country. They might have concerns about the laws, about the due process being followed in the judicial system. They might be concerned, for example, investors from developed countries who are investing in the Indian market. Don't you think they know about the pendency of cases in India's courts? They do know about the backlog of cases, how long a case will take to get resolved. So they don't want to get trapped in India's judicial system and get entrapped in those cases which might drag for 10, 15, 20 years. They would want quick resolutions, quick judgments. At the same time, India will have a sovereign right to enforce its law of the land, to ensure the due process is followed, to ensure our judicial system is followed. So a balance needs to be struck. So the BIT that we have signed with UAE, it mandates that for 3 years, cases will be taken up at domestic courts following the regular judicial process. A foreign investor who has faced a litigation in the country will have to fight out the case for at least 3 years according to this agreement that we have signed with UAE. But after the 3-year period, even after 3 years, if there is no court resolution which has not protected the investor's interests, then the investor can move the ISDS, Investor State Dispute Settlement Tribunal, which is a specialized body which can fast track the case and provide for a quick hearing, quick judgment, thus protecting the interests of the investor. But however, this is a departure from the model BIT. The model BIT, which India had drafted for itself, mandates a minimum 5-year period for domestic litigation. Recently, we have signed BITs with other countries as well, like Belarus, Kyrgyzstan, etc. For these countries, the minimum litigation period in domestic courts is 5 years before they can approach the tribunal. But we have made an exception for UAE because many countries were concerned about the 5-year delay. Developed countries, especially like UK and others, European countries, which are also negotiating BITs with India, they had a problem with India's model BIT. That for 5 years, you're dragging the case through courts. It will not get resolved. Then if you have to approach a tribunal, it's a huge delay which can cause significant losses to the investor. So to strike a balance and to favor the investors, the government has shown flexibility with United Arab Emirates. It has departed from the model BIT and provided for just 3 years of domestic litigation in local courts. And after that, investor can approach the tribunal and seek quick justice. The next point, the second concern investors had with India was the definition of investment. Obviously, to protect foreign investment, there should be a criteria, there should be a definition as to what qualifies to be foreign investment and which deserves protection under the BIT. Because this is a special treaty being signed, which gives some special protection to foreign investments. So there would be some basic criteria to determine as to which foreign investment qualifies for the BIT provisions. That includes the capital which is being brought in, the capital formation which occurs in the economy, right? The profitability of the business, the risk associated with the business. All those parameters are considered. This is quite normal. But there was one concern. In the model BIT, India has suggested, under the model BIT which India has drafted, that a foreign investment should benefit the host country. Foreign investment coming into our country should benefit the host country. Now you might think that there's nothing wrong with this. Obviously, foreign investment should benefit us as well. It can't be one-sided or unilateral. Only investors can't benefit. Our country should also benefit from it, right? But let me tell you the problem. The tribunals get a lot of discretion because of this. Because how do you determine what benefits the host country? The model BIT does not specify the exact parameters. Let's say if the agreement says that a foreign investment, if it creates these many jobs, or if it contributes to this much of GDP, then that is a quantifiable number based on which you can determine whether this investment deserves BIT protection or not. But there's no such criteria, no specific parameter, no guideline. It simply says the tribunals will decide as to whether the investment has served the host country or not. Now, that is a discretionary power. Tomorrow, tribunals will give different interpretation to it. So, investors are worried about this. That is why India has agreed to relax this provision. India has agreed with UAE to relax this provision, to take out this discretion, to remove this point on the criteria of investment, to remove the clause related to what benefits the host country. This clause is being removed to eliminate that discretion. Next, the third important point. What if there is a violation? What if there is a violation of the terms of the treaty by the government? Obviously, there has to be some relief to the investor, correct? Let's say the government misuses, abuses its regulatory power and investor wants to challenge that. So in that case, under the previous model BIT that we had, the model BIT recommended that customary international law would be followed by the tribunal if the investor is filing a case against the government for over-regulation, for violation of the treaty provisions. Now, customary international law again is open to interpretation. It's not set in stone. It's not well defined or clearly defined. It's a set of broad international principles which are accepted as part of international law. This again gave discretion to the tribunals. So this provision has also been removed with the BIT that we have signed with United Arab Emirates. Even this provision has been done away with. So this agreement that we have signed with UAE marks a significant departure on these three important points. We have shown flexibility to favor the investors, foreign investors, to make India more attractive to foreign investors. And this will definitely impress the developed countries as well. So we might see new BITs being signed with other developed economies because this is a big relief to them. But however, there are a few provisions where the government has strengthened its regulatory power as well. For example, under the BIT, India has not mentioned MFN status, most favored nation status. See, under the WTO norms, as far as international trade is concerned, according MFN status is a basic expected, it's an expected tradition where all countries recognize each other as their most favored nation and accord them the same treatment as they would accord to their most favored country. This ensures there is no discrimination, there is no unfair trade practices and a targeted discrimination against a certain country, right? It basically prevents a country from levying these trade barriers, creating tariff-based and non-tariff-based barriers which can target a certain country. But India doesn't make any such commitment under the BIT. Even though we do accord MFN status, right? Under the Bilateral Investment Treaty, there is no MFN promise made by India. And also, taxation powers of the government is outside the purview of the treaty. The government is free to impose whatever taxes it wants on investments. Investors will have no relief. They can't go to the court and challenge the taxation policy of the government because the government sees this as a sovereign right. So this has been kept outside the purview. The taxation powers will be unlimited and investors cannot question this in a court of law or at the tribunal, and MFN status is not a mandatory obligation as far as the BIT is concerned. So this is what we see with regard to India-UAE Bilateral Investment Treaty. There are some changes. There is a departure from the model BIT. There are some positive changes which will encourage developed countries as well, for investors from other major economies to invest in India, to seek a BIT with India. But there are certain provisions which strengthens the regulatory powers of the state. So it is a fine balance and it definitely promotes investments between India and UAE. UAE is a big investor in India, very critical for building our infrastructure, and India is also a major investor in the UAE. So it will only strengthen the economic relationship between the strategic partners. Next, on page number 13, we have this article that examines the role of social media, how the misuse and abuse of social media could be a threat to democracies. A very critical question being raised by this article. In fact, it's an interview carried out by the Hindu with two eminent experts. They bring out their views and opinions on the benefits and drawbacks of social media and how the misuse and abuse of social media could threaten democracy and what needs to be done to protect democratic states and to protect our societies from the abuse of technology. As they say, technology is a great enabler. Technology has always helped in erasing divides. It has created a level playing field. It has brought enormous benefits to mankind. Any major technological leap has brought tremendous benefits and transformed human society and civilization itself. But at the same time, if the technology is misused, it can have disastrous consequences. Take, for example, atomic energy. It can solve the energy problem of the world, bring economic upliftment, right? At the same time, it can be used to build nuclear bombs. The same goes for the latest technology which is coming out. Critical emerging technologies like AI can transform the way we live. It can bring out new solutions to governance-related problems, health-related problems. It can transform our economy, create millions of jobs. At the same time, it can destroy what we have built. The same goes with social media. When social media emerged in early 2000 as these digital communication platforms on the internet, it was a revolutionary tech. It brought the world closer. It allowed people to communicate with each other, create their own social networks, and even build businesses on it, to create livelihoods out of it. Today, a large part of the global economy is based on the internet, and social media is a primary driving force for the very model of that business. Take this class, for example. YouTube is a way for us to connect, or else a class like this would have never happened. And thanks to social media, there is a tool through which we can communicate across regions, across various barriers, and ensure that you can deliver a social good. But at the same time, misuse of technology, misuse of social media has been a major concern. Social media has been blatantly misused to spread fake news, to create propaganda, to even disrupt elections. And this is where democracy gets threatened. See, on social media, everybody is a content creator. All you need is a smartphone with basic internet connection. Even a 2G internet connection is fine. You can start creating content. When you look at traditional media like a newspaper or a TV channel, there would be few publishers, few editors, few broadcasters. There was greater care being taken by the editors and publishers to ensure that the content is as authentic as possible. Right? Even if there is a bias, ideological bias will always be there. But at least the facts were being delivered. Even if there were mistakes made, the media outlets would issue a correction, apologizing for the error and trying to bring out the actual fact. But that is not the case with social media. Anybody can spread whatever they want. Absolute blatant lies have been spread as facts. And the problem is many people accept those as facts. I'm sure everybody would have that uncle or auntie in their family who receive these WhatsApp forwards and they blindly, automatically believe whatever they are reading. Right? Forget the older population, even the current population, the well-educated youth as well. They blindly fall prey to fake news and propaganda without even thinking whether the information is true or not. And now this is tremendous power because this can be used to manipulate your view, your choice, your opinion. This is what we call as social engineering. Through a well-planned propaganda campaign that includes a mix of fake news, misinformation, disinformation, believe it or not, I can change your view, your opinion, your choice about something. This is a reality today. Technology has made this possible. Right? The data which is harvested by the social media firms, it gives them a complete profile about what you like, what you dislike. And if this profile about you is misused to send you targeted advertisements, targeted posts, targeted content, your views and opinions about everything can be changed. Maybe there's a new movie which has released. Maybe you never want to go out and see that movie, but through a right social media campaign, we can convince you. Let's say I'm the producer of the movie and I sponsor a social media propaganda campaign. And by creating this hype on social media, I can convince you to go out and watch that movie. You might think you made the choice, you made the decision, but that's not the truth. You were manipulated. You were socially engineered through a targeted campaign. Now imagine this happening with elections. Maybe you always support party A, but with the right campaign, I can convince you that party A is bad for the country. You need to vote for party B. Your political choice can be manipulated. And when this happens on a large scale, that is a threat to democracy. Because when this technology is in the wrong hands, right, multinational giants or hostile governments and their intelligence agencies or non-state actors, criminals and terrorist groups, they can easily misuse the tech to target governments, to trigger civil unrest or create rebellions against governments, disrupt elections, create real-world security problems. And that has become the truth over the last 15 to 20 years. The writers are specifically looking at the recent American presidential elections and the role of companies like X, formerly known as Twitter, which is owned by Elon Musk. As you all know, Elon Musk came out publicly in support of Donald Trump's presidential campaign, pledged millions of dollars in funding, and even used his platform X to lead the propaganda, which included a lot of fake news and misinformation and disinformation. Now, if a giant conglomerate, such as the companies owned by Elon Musk, for example, and platforms like X can be misused to favor a certain candidate, to target the opponent, and to exaggerate one of the candidates. Now, that could easily lead to social engineering. It could manipulate voter choice and lead to disruption of democracy. If a foreign government were to do that, or a hostile intelligence agency were to do that, that accounts for a compromise on democracy. It erodes the very basic tenet of democratic elections, which is free and fair elections. So that is the concern being debated here. Now, in the comments, can you let me know your suggestions on what you think? How can we solve the misuse of social media? What are the measures needed to tackle the problem? The article does go into that, but I don't want to discuss that. I would like to leave it to you. So you come out with your suggestions. What's the best way to tackle fake news, propaganda, misinformation, and disinformation? Think what the government has to do. Think what the companies, the social media firms, what they have to do. And more importantly, think what citizens have to do. Can you mention maybe 1 point for each? One suggestion for the government, one suggestion for the social media companies, one suggestion for the users, for the subscribers. Let me know in the comments. With this, we come towards the prelim section. Let's take a quick look at the small articles in the newspaper. On page number 6, we have an article referring to the International Cooperative Alliance. This global body is in the news because next week, India is going to host the Summit of International Cooperative Alliance. Now, this is a big opportunity for India. See, the International Cooperative Alliance was set up nearly 130 years ago in the 1800s. For the first time, India is getting to host the conference or the Summit of International Cooperative Alliance. Now, this is a significant opportunity for India because I hope you know the role of cooperatives in the economy. Cooperative societies can transform the economy, especially rural economy. Look at the dairy industry in India, microfinance in India. They are led by cooperatives, right? In fact, we have a dedicated ministry for cooperatives. There are constitutional provisions related to cooperative societies. It allows people to come together in a collective cooperative society and work towards a common cause. Cooperatives have become critical in delivering governance, in delivering credit or finance, particularly microfinance, in organizing economic activities from agriculture to dairying to animal husbandry. There are plenty of opportunities created by cooperative societies. Look at handlooms, the cottage industries, the native industries. They're all built on the cooperative model. So globally, there is an alliance that brings the cooperatives together. More than 100 countries are members of this alliance called International Cooperative Alliance. And since for India, cooperatives are critical, the opportunity to host this summit is a great opportunity for India. During the summit, Home Minister Amit Shah, who also happens to be the Minister for Cooperatives, would be inaugurating the event. PM Modi would also attend the event and declare this year, that is the coming year 2025, as the United Nations International Year for Cooperatives. The next year would be marked by the UN as the International Year of Cooperatives to promote the cooperative model. Is that clear? So that is why India has a great opportunity. So let's see what will be the developments. It will be reported next week. But please note down the key facts related to International Cooperative Alliance, which can be asked in a prelims question. It was established in the year 1895. It was established in 1895 as a non-governmental cooperative organization. It's an international non-governmental cooperative organization, basically like a NGO, and it brings together more than 300 cooperative federations from around the world, with close to 107 countries being part of it. It's headquartered in Brussels, Belgium, and it also has consultative status with the Economic and Social Council, or ECOSOC, which is one of the primary organs of United Nations. It has the consultative status with ECOSOC. It works closely with the UN, especially Economic and Social Council, that plays a key role in economic and social agenda of the United Nations. So these basic facts will help you. This alliance will act as a global representative voice of the entire cooperative community. Next, on page number 6 and 10, we have articles referring to two important tiger reserves in the country, the Bandipur Tiger Reserve and Ranthambore Tiger Reserve. The article here on page 6 refers to an annual temple festival which is held inside the Bandipur Tiger Reserve, the Beladkuppe Sri Mahadev Sami Temple Jatre, which is held inside the Bandipur Tiger Reserve. It brings almost 1 lakh devotees and pilgrims, where inside the core area, in the critical habitat of the tiger zone, right, within the core habitat, these stalls and exhibitions are set up, and lakhs of people, thousands of people will accumulate, leading to destruction of the habitat. It disturbs the wildlife and it affects the protection of the tigers in the Bandipur Tiger Reserve. So given the risk associated with increased chances of man-animal conflict and the disturbance that could be caused to the wildlife, this year the Karnataka Forest Department has decided to curb the Jatra and keep it limited, keep it restricted, to ensure that the tigers and the wildlife is not disturbed in the Bandipur Tiger Reserve. That's why the protected area is in the news. Then there is a similar article on page 10 related to Ranthambore in Rajasthan. It's referring to increasing incidents of man-animal conflict. It refers to recent cases of tiger attacks on the locals, which has resulted in the death of few people as well. And it talks about habitat loss, which has compromised the prey base available for the tigers, which is pushing the tigers to attack the local cattle, local dogs, and sometimes even the human beings. So increasing incidents of man-animal conflict has become a concern in Ranthambore as well. So you should know some basic facts about these important protected areas. So first, let's look at Bandipur. Bandipur is not just a tiger reserve, it's a national park as well, located in the Chamarajanagar district of Karnataka. And it is part of the Biosphere Reserve of the Nilgiris. It is one of the key components of the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve. It is bound by the Kabini River and the Moyar River. Now, there is something in common between Bandipur and Ranthambore. The common factor is that both are connected to the kingdoms that existed in the region. Bandipur was established by the Odayars of Mysore. In fact, the Odayars would even go on hunting trips in the Bandipur region, right? And there are many temples present which were supported by the Odayars in Mysore. There are some sacred historic temples, including the Himavad Gopal Swami temple. Now, that is very common with Ranthambore as well. Ranthambore National Park and Tiger Reserve in Rajasthan, it is bound by the Banas River and Chambal River. And inside the Tiger Reserve and National Park, you have the historic Ranthambore Fort, built by the Chauhan rulers. The Chauhan rulers of the region, right? They even used Ranthambore as a hunting ground, very similar to how Wadayars used Bandipur as a hunting ground. There are sacred temples present even in Ranthambore, including the historic Ranthambore fort. So that is something which is in common. But the vegetation is slightly different. In Bandipur, it's largely a dry to moist deciduous forest, which is part of the Western Ghats. But Ranthambore, you find more of dry deciduous forests. Next, Defense Minister Rajnath Singh, we discussed yesterday, is participating in the ADMM Plus meeting, which is being held in Vientiane, Laos, where Rajnath Singh has interacted with the defense ministers of all the ASEAN countries and as well as the dialogue partners of ASEAN. Right? So this has been a great opportunity for India's defense minister to raise India's security concerns. And he has pointed out that Buddhist principles and Buddhist doctrine could be used to resolve present-day conflicts. Now, this is quite significant. Given the kind of global conflicts we are experiencing around us and our own experience with our neighbors, this suggestion that we should rely on Buddhist doctrine, adopt the path of middle balance, adopt the path of ahimsa, right? That is the core tenet of Buddhism. And in fact, this is what helped India-China at one point in 1950s to come out with the Panchsheel doctrine, the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence. That is a core tenet of Buddhism. It's a prescription to a Buddhist monk to not interfere with others' lives, to not meddle with others, and to lead a balanced life. We drew inspiration from the Buddhist principles, both India, China, and adopted that into the Panchsheel doctrine, which became the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence. Though India, China eventually broke the Panchsheel commitments, primarily China, which instigated India to the war. But still, there is an instance where we have relied on Buddhist principles to shape relations with other countries, especially when there are conflicts and disputes. So this could be a path as well. Going forward, India could possibly champion this as the birthplace of Buddhism, right? India actively promotes its Buddhist heritage, and that is a suggestion that you need to take note of. Another important point here in this article is this. During ADMM Plus meeting, India, Australia, both were part of the meeting, obviously, because Australia is also a dialogue partner of ASEAN. So Australia's defense minister was also present. Both sides have signed a key agreement. The 2 air forces of India, Australia have agreed to provide air-to-air refueling support to each other. Please make a note. India, Australia have signed an air-to-air refueling agreement, which enables the 2 air forces, Indian Air Force and the Australian Air Force, to help out each other by providing mid-air refueling facility. This will significantly extend the operational range of our fighter jet and even our transport planes. So if necessary, India can request Australia for mid-air refueling, let's say when we are deploying towards the Pacific. And if Australia is deploying towards the Indian Ocean, it can rely on Indian Air Force for mid-air refueling. This enhances the operational range, and both the like-minded countries can thus stabilize the Indo-Pacific and deal with all the threats in the Indo-Pacific. This is very significant given that India, Australia, they have common issues with China and Chinese aggression. They're part of the Quad grouping as well. So that is why it's a very important development. Coming to the last article on page 20, International Criminal Court has finally issued arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, who has been accused of leading a genocide, committing war crimes and crimes against humanity in Gaza against Palestinians. Along with him, his former defense minister, Yoav Gallant, who was recently removed from the cabinet, and as well as several Hamas leaders who were responsible for the brutal terror attack on October 7, 2023, where 1,000 plus Israeli civilians, innocents were slaughtered. All these individuals have been issued an arrest warrant by the ICC. This is similar to how ICC issued an arrest warrant against Russian President Putin for alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity in Ukraine. Now, these arrest warrants, they do have an implication, because if these individuals who have arrest warrants against them issued by the ICC, if they were to travel to a ICC member country which has signed and adopted the Rome Statute, which is party to the ICC, then that country will be obligated to arrest that individual, despite their diplomatic immunity. Now, let's say, for example, Putin were to travel to a country which is a member of ICC, which has signed, ratified Rome Statute, then that country will be obligated to arrest Putin. Similarly, those restrictions will apply for the Israeli leaders, Benjamin Netanyahu and his former defense minister, and it will apply for Hamas leaders as well. Is that clear? This restricts their movement. That is the reason why Putin has not been able to attend many of the global summits in the last couple of years. Is that clear? So this is a big development. Now, please read more about Rome Statute and ICC and let me know in the comments whether India is a member or not. Has India signed and ratified the Rome Statute? Are we party to ICC? Yes or no? Let me know in the comments. So this completes my detailed analysis of today's The Hindu. I hope you guys have understood all the key points. And for further clarification and for updates on current affairs, please join my Telegram channel by scanning the QR code. So that is it for today. If you like the session, do press the like button. Do let me know the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. That is it. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.